Hey guys, Danny Johnson here, and today we're going to go over properly setting up the clutch. So to do this, it's very helpful to have the clutch quadrant and firewall adjuster, and so I do have a video that I can put in the description on how to install that. That way you can actually adjust it. Some cars like my Cobra has one where it has a lock. So the wheel there in the back locks it into place, so you loosen that and then you can adjust the firewall adjuster in and out. And so you want to make sure that if you have that you have it unlocked. Then once it's adjusted, you can lock it back into place. Some of the other ones, like the one I have on my Mach 1, a Fiore brand, I really liked because it has little notches in it, so every quarter turn or so it locks into place. So this is what the firewall adjuster looks like right here. As you unthread it, it spreads it out, and that is the effect of putting more pressure on the clutch cable. It's as if you're pushing the clutch in. As you turn it clockwise and it goes smaller, that's the effect of loosening or adding slack to the cable. So we'll go through a few scenarios of when you would need to thread the firewall adjuster in to add slack or out to tighten up the cable. If it helps you to think of it this way, the more you thread it in, it will grab towards the floor of the car. The more you take the firewall adjuster and thread it out, it will grab higher up away from the floor. When it is set up properly, you should have a slight air gap. So look at this as I push the clutch fork. Notice how there's just the tiniest little air gap, as it's called, and you'll listen to it how close this is to the diaphragm fingers. Now the bearing is designed to spin at all times, just not with a lot of pressure on it. That pressure is called preload, and so one of the best ways to tell is to look through the clutch window like this as somebody pushes the clutch in and out, and what you're looking for is to make sure that the clutch diaphragm fingers are collapsing when the clutch is pushed in, and just watch that travel. So if the clutch cable is too tight, when you would push the clutch in and it pulls that clutch fork forward, you can over collapse those diaphragm fingers. That's bad for the clutch, it's bad for the throwout bearing, and you can snap the cable. So you only want it to really compress enough to release the clutch, but not over extend it. Now what I like to do is unthread the firewall adjuster while the clutch cable is not connected. That way it's very easy to turn it clockwise or counterclockwise to spread that firewall adjuster in and out, and I get it to the point where it takes just a little bit of pressure to attach the cable. And once the cable does loop through, it does come back a little bit towards the rear of the car. So with a pry bar you can pry forward, loop that in, and then release it. And I just like to have it a little bit more on the tight side to start out because it's easier to turn the firewall adjuster with the pressure of the clutch pushing against it. It's easier to loosen it back up rather than try to tighten it. So in this first example, our clutch cable is too tight. So what you notice is as I go to let the clutch out, it does not grab until it's about halfway or 3/4 of the way out. Proper adjustment would mean that about 1 to 2 inches off of the floor, it should start to grab. That way you know you have your full travel, but it's not so tight that letting the clutch out doesn't do anything. So to correct this, we're going to turn this clockwise, and what that is doing is shortening the firewall adjuster and in essence taking some pressure off of the clutch cable. And so that should bring the clutch fork back to where it's not as tight. Now when we push the clutch in and we have our full throw, it's not over collapsing those diaphragm fingers. If it helps you to think of it this way, the more you thread it in, it will grab towards the floor of the car. The more you take the firewall adjuster and thread it out, it will grab higher up away from the floor. Now when we test it again, we notice that the clutch starts to grab closer to the floor, about 1 to 2 inches, which is right where we want it. So that means we have our full compression of the diaphragm fingers when the clutch is in, and as we have 2 inches or so of travel off of the floor, as we start lifting the clutch up, it starts to grab. Then that way we know we're not pushing the clutch in too far, and it's grabbing just at the right time. We're getting the perfect amount of travel. Now, one way to test this is as you're driving down the road with just a little bit of pressure on the gas pedal, push the clutch in, and you'll notice when the RPMs start to come up, that means the clutch is engaging and releasing that pressure, and you'll get that feel of where it's grabbing, and that's how you'll know how tight it is. So you should be able to have it start to have those RPMs come up as you are pushing in about an inch or two, and then it should fully release by the time your foot's hitting the ground, and then you should have that 2 inches or so off of the floor when it starts to grab again. So watch the RPMs come up here as I'm starting to push this clutch in. So that's how you can know where the clutch is engaging and disengaging. There are a few factors that will alter all of this. Here's a new pivot ball stud that I've installed. So that being worn out, the length of the stud itself, the Cobra has a shorter one, they sell adjustable ones, and I have videos showing you how to set that length, so check the video description for that. But even the clutch fork itself being worn out, the clutch itself being worn out, or the bearing being bad, and even the clutch quadrant that you're running, this one has 3 different hooks to choose from, all of that will be factors on how and where it's engaging. Another scenario would be if you go to try to put it into gear, you push the clutch all the way in and it will not go into gear. You might not be getting the full travel that you need to, so that'd be saying like the clutch cable is not tight enough. And so what's happening in essence is, since you're not pushing that clutch in all the way, it's not completely collapsing those diaphragm fingers enough to take the pressure off the transmission, so you can't shift into a gear. So if you tighten that clutch cable but still don't tighten it enough, if you go to push the clutch in, you put it in gear and the car starts moving even though the clutch is all the way in, then you're not fully collapsing those diaphragm fingers to disengage the clutch, and so you would still need that cable to be tighter. So what you'd have to do is come out and turn this counterclockwise. That would spread it out and make the cable tighter. So hopefully this video has been helpful. Check the video description because I do have a full playlist on how to replace these parts, even the throwout bearing, the clutch, and how to do it on the Cobra, the GT, the different models. Here it is on my GT just the other day. The throwout bearing seized itself to the input shaft retainer sleeve, so I kind of had to use the clutch fork as a slide hammer on that. But I do have other videos that go in depth for setting pivot ball stud length and everything like that, so please check the video description. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Thanks guys.